you're some of the most important people in your field. What we've learned recently is that 96% of all Australian businesses use professional services when they start their businesses, when they manage them, when they end them. So consultants like yourselves are very important people. And I understand that in your field, that if people don't come to you for advice, they risk losing their livelihoods. They risk losing their businesses and everything they've worked hard for over the years. So you're very important people for the community. So my opinion is we're probably coming into some of the most challenging times in Australian businesses. My brother told me yesterday that more than 5,000 people are moving to Sydney every single week. And there's more competitors in our fields, your field and my field, than ever before. And there's also fewer customer dollars to spend. In the professional speaking circuit at the moment, there's more speakers than listeners. So there's so many people in our field and we're fighting for the attention of the same people. But there's limited customer dollars as well. So there's going to be more challenges, which means like every professional team, we have to be the most highly trained team out there. There was some work recently from Daniel Goleman, and he said the average CEO has the lowest level of emotional intelligence.
Not surprised.
So being in business development and working with customers face to face, we have to have that, and it's so important. There's a direct connection between how much you earn and your level of emotional intelligence. So according to the work of Daniel Goleman, is if you have a higher level of emotional intelligence in comparison to somebody else in the same position, in the same company, or in the same field, you'll earn on average $39,000 more than the other person, just on EI alone. And for every 1 point improvement you have, you'll see a corresponding increase in your salary by $1,750. So that goes in your pocket, which means we know more has gone into the company's pocket as well. Consulted more people on emotional intelligence in the last 3 years than the span of 250 other coaches globally. And I've taken through 1,300 individual people through an emotional quote and assessment, people in PricewaterhouseCoopers, and we've seen the growth in emotional intelligence. We've seen their sales increase, we've seen company revenues increase, and their income increase. We have one lady by the name of Lisa in Sole. She was an Italian bedding manufacturer, and she improved hers by about 15 points, but within 21 days, her personal sales went up $1.6 million. And it was the fear of rejection. And that was emotional intelligence. So you have...
How do you measure it? Is it a questionnaire or...?
Yeah, it's like a blood test. So you'll sit there and you'll fill out the responses to an emotional quotient, and it'll give you direct feedback. And there's 5 areas. So for Lisa, she wasn't aware of her fear. She thought, I'm great in business, we're making millions of dollars, I must be the best. But that fear of rejection, it would still stop her from asking for the order. And these sales would just stretch out into infinity because she wouldn't ask or close. So as soon as she overcome that fear, which is self-regulation, you can regulate it, she just started to ask for the order. And so you measure it on the way in, and then you can measure it on the way out. We had a firefighter in the United Kingdom. She increased her emotional intelligence by about 117%. Good morning.
Good morning.
In motivation, and her personal income went up 500% that year. Phenomenal.
Is that?
Absolutely. DISC is really important because it's self-awareness. You can't fix something if you don't know what's broken. So if you understand where that limitation is, with DISC, that improves your self-awareness. So in DISC, you have a look at how you approach problems, and people approach them differently. And with your dominance, if you're a high D person and you're very aggressive in overcoming problems, then your level of fear will be different to somebody who has a low level of dominance. You'll also have the I factor, which is the influence. If you're very high I, you're very sociable, but your biggest fear is isolation. Because it's like, oh my gosh, what if somebody rejects me? It's not the fear of losing the business, it's the fear of loss of connectedness. You also have steadiness, which is the third part of the DISC. And steadiness is how you deal with the pace of the environment. So if the pace is really, really fast and consistent, you might thrive in that area. But it may be fast and inconsistent. So previously I was a cabin crew for Emirates Airline, and you'd get a roster, you were still being cabin crew, but you'd go to New York one day, Sydney the next, you go to Hamburg, and then you go to Delhi. And for that roster, it burnt people out because it wasn't with their style. So self-awareness, once Emirates realised that they should hire people based on their personality style, most of the early department and breaking contracts ceased. So the longevity of each individual expanded past 3 years. So Emirates Airline, if you join as cabin crew, it takes 2 years to become profitable. But people were leaving after 3 months in droves. They would have up to 500 people resigning every single month. So once they started to use that technology and self-awareness, they'd ask people, is this the type of job you'd like? And they'd say no. They'd say, well, it's not for you. And then you have compliance. Compliance is that C factor. It's how we deal with details. And some people are very good with details. You've got clients who get stuck in the details and they never get out. Then you've got other clients who have no detailed paperwork whatsoever. And you think to yourself, how do they run a business? Now the person who is a very high C, Ben, also has a fear of making a mistake. And what can happen is they can go into procrastination. They can have their business plan together. They can have their forecast, but they're not aware of how their personality style inhibits performance. So DISC is emotional intelligence. We've called EQ many different names over the years. Previously we called it street smart. And so now we've labelled it EQ, so we can measure it. So there are those street smart people. It's that entrepreneur who you would see who's dropped out of school at 15 and built a business with revenues of 30, 40, 50 million dollars. And they're just street smart. They get along with people. They can read people. They can bring teams together. And it's like leadership. What leadership is, they keep changing the definition. And leadership is the ability to get followers. And these street smart people can get followers. And then you bring in the IQ, and then you can build your business. But without both, they can't succeed. And I think that's probably when they call on people like yourself. Their knowledge, their IQ gets them so far. And then once you bring in a new form of knowledge, with that EQ, they can succeed further along. IQ will be set, and if you do a IQ test, probably at about age 13 to 14, the level of IQ you have at that age won't change for the rest of your life. But EQ is like water, it's fluid. You can improve it. So we'll give you some EQ skills today. Bang, you'll have it straight away.
My understanding was that with EQ, rhythm.
I'll give you a formula. The formula is individual human potential. So write down IHP, individual human potential. And this is a great formula. So what we're born with is inborn attributes. So write IA, inborn attributes. Now your inborn attributes, 65% of your personality is set in stone. It's those things that you get from your parents. So as an example, my father was a farmer. So as a farmer, you get up early and you don't finish work until the job's done, whether it be 11 p.m. or 1 a.m. in the morning. And that's in me. You can't take it out of me. It's just in there. So you'll have these inborn attributes as well. If you're born in a foreign land, one of your inborn attributes might just be your language. It's like my children, they just speak Chinese and English equally as well. It's just in them. So you'll have these, and you have to be really aware of these.
You look very Chinese.
Ni hao, xie xie. Ni hao, wo shu dan ye. Also, I'm also Arabic,
Right.
but I'm not sure if it's my past life or my next life. So I've still got a little bit of the residual
It's
in there.
always good to be positive about where you're going to, right?
Salam alaikum, ismi Daniel, tasharafna. So we've got these inborn attributes. And when you look at your parents, and then you look at yourself, you'll see these things that have been passed down through the bloodline. So that's set. The next one is acquired attributes, AA. And all knowledge is learnable. There's nothing that you cannot learn. And then you have skill. There is no skill that is not transferable. You weren't born into insolvency. You learned. You weren't a born business development manager. You learned. So you learn the knowledge and then you acquire the skills. And then what we have is attitude. So the formula is IA times AA plus A, which is our attitude.
So skills is under AA plus.
Yep. So IA times AA plus A. And attitude, coming from aviation, I like to think of it as our angle of approach. So if you're in business development and I'm approaching a customer with the fear of rejection, the approach is like this: oh my gosh, they're going to say no. But fear of rejection is learned. It's not a natural fear. There's two. You're a father. Are you a mother? Ben, do you have children?
Yes.
Do you have children, Anthony? Not yet?
No.
None that you know of. So Father's Day, phones off. Do you have children? So we know that the only two fears that a child has is the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. All other fears are learned. Rejection is learned. Fear of failure is learned. Fear of success is learned. Fear of the unknown. All of that's learned. So when we change our attitude and we approach somebody with confident expectations in business, what happens is our angle of approach is different. So that's what we can learn in emotional intelligence. The other thing is the comfort zone. Because that comfort zone, if people have lived in fear for 30 years, it's going to take them a period of time to get out of that. But that's when motivation comes in. And we'll talk about that in a moment. How many times are you willing to hear no to get a yes? And if you can just hear no more times than your competitor, you'll get the yes. But it's emotional intelligence. You've got to know what am I feeling and how do I regulate that. So for some people it'll be easier, for some people it'll be harder, but everybody can do it.
A rapport.
Yep. Rapport is the key. And people with low emotional intelligence can't gain rapport. So the better emotional intelligence you have, the easier it is to get rapport. And rapport will be a basis of the training we do today. Well, I think it could almost be all of them. I think there's some dads who have just got some really good dad jokes, and then there's some just dads who have got the worst dad jokes ever. My grandfather, he had the ability to tell a very good story, but it can also skip a generation. My mum, she's not the best storyteller, but I've become a good storyteller. But of course I had admired that attribute in him and went and learned how to do it as well. So it can be inborn and lay dormant, and you can do nothing about it. And then you can go acquire the attributes, and then it's how you approach. If you want to approach somebody in selling with humour and great stories, and it works for you, do it. But it also won't work for others. Because you know, some people tell jokes and you cringe. You go, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get out of the room.
Awkward.
Very awkward. So there's 5 pillars of emotional intelligence. The first one is self-awareness. And Ben mentioned this with his disc before, was that self-awareness is understanding who you are. It's understanding your strengths and your weaknesses. It's understanding your likes and your dislikes. It's understanding what attitudes you have towards certain things. And it all starts with self-awareness. If you don't know how different fears impact you, you can't move on to self-regulation. So self-regulation is the second pillar of emotional intelligence. And that's the ability to manage your emotions. So in emotional intelligence, everything starts with a thought. So you think about business development, and you might have a little voice in your head that says, you know what, today I couldn't be bothered. And that's the first thought. That thought influences 95% of your feelings. And that's when the emotions pop up. Once the emotion rises, it determines the actions that you do and you don't take. And then that determines the outcome. So let's say like this. First of all, you say, you know what, I've got to close this sale today, but I think they're going to say no. That fear of rejection automatically rises immediately inside of you, just by imagining it. And then when it comes to take action and you're moving towards the client, then what will happen is you won't ask for the order. Or if you do, you'll fumble, you'll knock over your tea, you'll screw something up, your pen will break. And then what happens, the outcome is you don't get the business. So if you're self-aware and you say to yourself, I don't think I'm going to get the business, and you can catch that thought within a few seconds, then you can regulate it. And you're saying, no, 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 no. I want this business. I have been following this customer up for 12 months. I've been working with my referral partner for 2 years. I've been in this career for 8 years. You know what? I actually want this and I deserve it. And then you start to feel confident. So your emotion changes immediately. You don't need therapy. You just capture that thought, and that will change the emotion, because the thought influences 95% of the feelings. So when you believe you're worthy of it, you know what, I do deserve this, and you go into that meeting and you still have that thought that we're going to help these people, we're going to solve their problem, you'll have confidence. You will ask for the order and you'll get paid. So that's self-regulation. It's the ability to understand, first of all, what's the limitation and what it is. And once you understand what it is, you can then manage it. And most people who work in very detail-oriented roles, they're not that good at regulation. And this is why when you go further up the hierarchy, up to the COO, they're dealing with so much data and they're not on the ground anymore. And so the self-talk overpowers them. So you have self-regulation. The third part, which is really important for everybody, is motivation. Motivation is not the rah-rah jump around. It's that internal drive. It's the ability to get knocked down and to get back up. It's the ability to get knocked down 8 times and get back up 9 times. And that's motivation. And that comes from within. Motive comes from within. Motivation also is our comfort zones. And some people get in an income comfort zone. And based on all the study over the past 20 and 30 years, is that our income comfort zone has a 10% cap on either side. So if you're earning $200,000 a year and you increase your income by 10%, you go up to $220,000. But what happens at $220,000 is you start to spend more than you had before. And you've seen this with your clients. They start to make money and they just spend everything and a little bit more. And that's called self-sabotage. For the parents in the room, when your children get sick, they get what's called hyperprexia. The body temperature goes up by as little as 10%, and if it goes up any more than that, it can kill them. So what do we try to do? We pat them down with water to get them back into the comfort zone, back down to 37 degrees. So when you see your clients overspending, they're outside of their comfort zone and they don't have a self-concept for this new level of money. So the first thing, I've got to get rid of it. They'll buy the Rolex before they should. And all of a sudden they've got all this jewellery and this magnificent stuff, but they're spending more than they're earning. And the average executive in Australia has a burn rate of 30 days. That means that if income stops today, they can't survive for more than 30 days. And it's because they're so far out of their comfort zone. Other businesses, and you see this as well, is if they're used to making $10 million in sales, and now it drops by 10% and they go down to $9 million, it's equal to hypothermia. And what happens is they're outside of their comfort zone and they go into scrambling behaviour and they start to discount their prices. They start to give all these giveaways away, and what they're trying to do is they're only trying to get back up to $10 million, but they're giving so much stuff away that they're still not profitable. So they climb back up just to 10 million, but it's back into the comfort zone. It's back to exactly where they were. So when you see this in your clients, that's motivation. That's emotional intelligence. And that comfort zone kicks in at 10%. So if you're doing 100 mil and you get to 110 mil, they won't have a self-concept on how to manage that business, manage the people, because it's so far out of the comfort zone. Like Rory mentioned before, and I'm sure you won't mind, you mentioned you put on a bit of weight, but you become very self-aware of it when you put on weight, don't you? And then what you do, you think, oh gee, the shirt's getting a bit tight, I better get back to the gym. Or if you drop a little bit and you're looking a bit skinny, people say, have you lost weight? You don't look healthy. And it's because they've been used to you in that comfort zone.
I don't see that very often. Got to get out of my 10% zone.
Yes.
So those first three, all of that happens inside of yourself. The other two areas are empathy. And Anthony mentioned it before, it's the ability to read the other person. It's the ability to look over and notice, is my message getting through to these people or not? And you know those people who just keep talking and talking and talking, the message is not going through, and they don't see it. And that's empathy. You've got to be able to read the emotional tone. And communication is 55% physiology. You know, our body gives away so much information, but people don't see it.
It's changed. It used to be 88%. What happened?
Well, now they're dividing it.
Mobile phones. Is that why it's gone down or something?
Well, we've got 35, we say 38% is attributed to the tone of voice. You know, your mothers, your grandmother said, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah.
And on the telephone today, incredibly important. And we're going to be very mindful. So some people think that I've got this big, deep voice and I speak slow. And they just do that all the time. But then they speak to a smaller, petite lady who's got a very high voice who speaks really fast. And what will happen is, because his voice is low and deep and hers is high and fast, what happens is when they communicate, the message doesn't get through. Because the body, the nervous system kicks in and it goes into the fight, flight or freeze response and it says, that person's not like me. And you lose rapport over your tone of voice. So your tone is your volume. Have you had a loudspeaker before? And then you have those people who just speak really soft. And you're like, can't you just speak louder, please? So if you don't have those matching and mirroring, you don't get rapport. You also have your cadence, and it's the certain beat. And some people have a very funny beat when they talk. It's like they're a rapper. And if you match and mirror that, you can build rapport. And that's empathy.
This sounds like neuro-linguistic programming, that mirroring concept.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have what's in the body called a mirror neuron. So when you watch funniest home videos and somebody gets kicked in the stomach by a horse, what happens to you? You feel it immediately, and that's the mirror neuron. It's been within us.
See someone getting kicked somewhere else, definitely feel it too.
Everybody feels
The
it.
empathy kicks in.
And like the mothers, when you see a newborn baby, the motherly instinct comes in. So that's empathy. And we have to be very good at reading these subtle cues. And then the final one is social skills. That's the ability to get your message across. And 99% of problems in business come from miscommunications. You're responsible as the speaker to put your message out there, and as the listener, you're responsible for your perceptions and how you hear it. But if you want to make a sale, you've got to be very cued up on who's getting your message and who's not. And then you've got to have the flexibility to change it. And that's the emotional intelligence aspect. So we're going to take that knowledge and we're going to put it into a system. And you're going to start to see just how quickly you can improve your emotional intelligence. So this does come from NLP.
Thank you.
And this is called sensory acuity. Sensory acuity was first brought to us by a gentleman by the name of Milton H. Erickson. And he was the world's foremost hypnotherapist. And he had polio, and he laid in bed till the age of 18. And when he laid in bed, his head would hang off the end of the bed, and he basically saw the world upside down. But what happens is when your head hangs off the back, eventually your vision flips around and you see everything upright. So he learned to walk by watching his sister walk in and out of the room. But being that he had polio, as an older man, his body was crippled, and he could see if somebody was going into trance by the pulse on the ankle. So you have a pulse on your ankle like you do on your wrist, and he could see that change when people went in and out of trance. And if you have enough sensory acuity, you'll be able to see when your clients understand and don't understand your message. And if you can then adjust your message and repeat it back in a different way, you'll get through. But you have to be able to have a feedback mechanism, and that's the body. So we'll have a look here. What we're looking for is, we say that 55% of the communication is the physiology, and we have skin all over our body. I was in a court case recently, and the judge, he was hot-headed, and what would happen is, as the lawyer for the other party was talking, the judge would get angry, and his skin colour would change. It would go from light to red, and you could see this blood red coming up to his chin, up through his cheeks, all the way past his eyes, and all the way to the back of his head, because he was bald.
Rosacea, isn't it?
And he was furious. But you could see
Rosacea.
that colour shift. But you've also heard the saying, the blood drained out of the face. And you've seen people, they're in shock, and the colour drains out. Now, every moment, you don't know what's happening to you, but your skin is changing colour. And when you communicate, you have these little buying signals. And if you can see the client's skin colour change, you know when your information is being accepted and when it's being rejected. We also have our skin tonus. So think of the face as being symmetrical or not symmetrical. You've smelt foul milk before, and you smell it and you go, and it tends to be the left lip that rises up. So the face, when you smile naturally, it'll curl up and it'll be a mirror image. But when you smell tainted milk, you go, oh, that doesn't smell so good. But you've also seen people, they look at things like this and they go, oh, and all of a sudden the tonus of the skin changes in the face. So one eye will be squinched in and the other one will open up. And people will do this when you talk about things. Do you like the colour of this car? Oh, yuck. Do you want leather seats, or do you want the fabric seats? Or don't want the fabric seats. And these are little buying signals. We also have breathing. People can breathe fast or they can breathe slow. Have a think about it and they go, and other people are sitting there and they're quite nervous, like, can you help me? Can you help me? And they breathe really fast. And all of this is communication from the body. You also have people who breathe high up in the chest. Oftentimes when people have anxiety, they'll breathe from here up. They can't get a full breath. Have you had anxiety before and you're trying to breathe in, but because the chest cavity is so tight, the air doesn't go down. And then there's other people, they're belly breathers, and their belly moves in and out like this, and you can see it. We also have the lower lip size. When people like something, they tend to lick their lips. They go, I like that. So you can see this. But you'll also notice that there'll be no lines in the lips. When there's no lines in the lips, there's a lot of blood in the lips. But when you say to somebody, this is what you need to do, and they don't agree with it, they'll go, I don't know about that. And the lips will come in, there'll be a lot of lines, and the blood moves out of the lips. So think about one of your old aunties who tries to give you a kiss at the Christmas party, and she goes, give me a kiss. And she gets the cat's bum lips. You'll see this with people from moment to moment. They go, oh, I don't like that. And then the eyes. The eyes can be focused or defocused. So if you play poker, people wear glasses, don't they? And you know why they're wearing glasses, because they don't want you to see the pupils. So what happens is when you like something, the pupils open right up, because all of a sudden the body brings in all this information. And you can see this in the jade markets in China. They always wear dark glasses, because if you see a piece of jade that you like, the pupil just goes and you can't control it. But then when people feel threatened, the pupil becomes undilated and it's like a pinhead. And you can see this. And the poker players, they wear the glasses because when they get a good hand, boom, dilation. When they got a bad hand, it shrinks, and then they lose their negotiation powers. Well done. So these things happen at a blink of an eye, and the more that you practice these, the sharper they get. It's like learning to ride a bicycle. You couldn't ride a bicycle, then you rode one with training wheels. Today you've got your training wheels on. By the end of the week you should be able to take the training wheels off, and you'll have a lot of attention. You'll have to put your attention on it, and then eventually after a week or two you'll just see these things naturally moving in and moving out, and you'll say, this person really likes my message here, or I don't think they're understanding my presentation. Let me do some check-ins with them. And it's very subtle. And that's emotional intelligence. And this can be learned, and you can get better at it. It's like a game of football. You start with no skills, and then eventually you can go through the grades all the way up and you can represent your country. Now, you have served more than 2,500 people, I believe, over the past 23 years. And it's probably my opinion that you're probably just getting warmed up, and that in the next few years you want to expand that. Would that be fair to say? So these are some tools that you can put in your tool belt so that you can start to sell more, faster and easier in any market. So thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
I appreciate you having me here.
Before you go,